Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues and listeners and anybody who might be tuning in for the first time, got a very competent and enthusiastic and positive young man with us this morning, and he's coming to us all the way from Tel Aviv. His name is Ittay Hayut, and for ease and for the fact that I'm not that good at pronouncing certain names, we're going to call him Ty. So Ty, welcome. And Ty is the CEO and co-founder of Hoopo. And we will find out a little bit more about Hoopo in a minute. So Ty, thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris.
Brilliant.
So
now, obviously, one of the first things that people are going to see is they're going to see, right, here he is, young man, CEO and co-founder, and he looks very young, especially when it's compared to me. But one of the things I'd like before we start is, can you just give us a little bit of background about the company and how and why you started it?
yeah, of course. Thanks for having me here, Chris. In some places, I tell that I'm the adopted CEO, as I reduced the average age in the company by about 25 years. I was very lucky to come across a group of a team of world experts in the field of radio location and radio systems. That this was about 4 or 5 years ago already, and I think back at the time it was clear to us, with the expertise that we had from most of us had it from our military service actually. We knew that low power and tracking and visibility are things that will change the world eventually. With processes of digitization and data-driven decisions to optimize processes, it was pretty clear that if we had a good technology, we can start founding a very interesting company. And when we started the company, and I'm going to tell you something that we haven't told to the press before, but the first idea was to track our dogs. I had a sick dog at the time. I wanted to track it, and I got tired of all this equipment that, every 2 days the power runs out. You have to go and charge it to replace the batteries. And after a week, you just end up throwing the damn thing away. And we started playing with technologies, and it took us a while, but eventually what we eventually developed is a tracking solution that can communicate to distances of several kilometers with an accuracy of about 10 meters or 33 feet. And the batteries on a very small device can last for up to 5 years. And this was a game changer. And it took us a very short while to understand how this can be implemented in worlds of supply chain logistics. And eventually, about a year and a half ago, we also started adapting our solutions to the ground operations space, in which what we basically do is we create visibility for non-powered GSE. So we track dollies, we create location data, and we optimize processes. We make sure that no one delays a flight because of a lost item. And this is how we came to found the company. We've already grown to 15 full-time employees in our headquarters here, and we have several agents, resellers, partners all around the world, from the US through the UK, and even in Japan and Singapore.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that's given us a nice introduction. And you mentioned there 3DM, so the data-driven decision making, which is also one of the things that ICAO is pushing now with root cause analysis. So it's very appropriate, because I've just come from a webinar on that particular subject matter. So do you want to just expand a little bit on 3DM?
Yeah, sure. I mean, all of our solutions are based on a very simple concept of, it stands on 3 pillars. This is how we look at it. There's tracking. If you want to make data-driven decisions that have something to do with geographic position, you have to start tracking things. You have to start creating data. But this data is not enough. So the second pillar is analyze. You have to analyze the data. You have to look at it in a smart way. I actually listened to your podcast with Yuval from Magic Software Enterprise, and you need to create eventually actionable insights that would allow companies to use things the way they understand it, and the way they want to use it. And then the third and last pillar is eventually excelling. If you have actionable insights, if you can make data-driven decisions, and I'll give you a very simple example in a moment, you can start improving your operations and saving money. And one of the examples, actually pre-COVID-19 and post-COVID-19, is assets allocation and asset procurement decisions. And nowadays, people want to start storing dollies or non-powered assets in a long-term storage facility, because they want to prevent the wear and tear of the assets. Yeah. So how many do you put in the long-term storage? Nowadays you have to guess, but if you were able to measure the usability of the assets, you can understand if you can tell that on a specific day you're using 100% of your dollies, then you know that you need to get more dollies. And if you only use 50% of your dollies on average every day, you can store more in long-term storage. So it's all about, creating data and analyzing it and excelling. That's all we do.
And that's so important, because without those triggers, it's all feeling gut, and people say, oh yeah, I've got the experience and I know and all that, which doesn't mean anything now anymore. Now, I've been involved in several hubs, opening, ORAP moves, etc. And some of the things that you just said, the balance between the passenger organisation and the cargo organisation, and who has dollies, and whether people should be occupying dollies to build on, and all the usual arguments. I mean, this seems to me like a no-brainer. It's so important, and it's so important for use, for preventive maintenance schedules, for, just like you said, assets and stock values, and also distribution of equipment, so that you don't wear half of them out and the others have hardly been used. So I'm assuming it's able to be used for all of those particular areas.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, location, knowledge about location is something that everyone needs for everything. I mean, forget about aviation. I can see that you're wearing, your glasses, your eyeglasses. I have mine as well, just not on me. But my guess is that if you could, you would want to track your glasses, because you probably forget them sometime somewhere, right?
You know how bad it is when you get old. I've had them and I'm still looking for them, and I'm blaming my wife for using them, and then all of a sudden I go like that and they're on the top of my head.
Exactly. So you want to track everything, you want to know where everything is located, but it has always been a question of, what's the ROI? Is there an ROI? How much would you pay for this? And I think, when it comes to motorized equipment in airports, people have been tracking it for decades probably. But when it comes to the non-powered assets, and let's be honest, the value of a dolly or a staircase for the day-to-day operations is much lower than a tractor with a driver. Yep. And so I think that with technology, price has come to a point in which it makes sense for companies to go and deploy it. And this is what we think is going to happen. Of course, this was pre-COVID-19, but I think that also during COVID-19, we have several customers that are converting this crisis to an opportunity, and they are optimizing their processes so that when travel partially returns, they will be better ready for it.
Yeah, you're right, and I think it's funny enough. We one of the shows, and the show that we do on a Saturday, we talk about things like the new normal formula and what people should do, and getting rid of legacy waste and doing things differently. And obviously one of the things is, on top of cash flow, it's now cost effectiveness, but it's also margins matter. And anything that people can do to make their businesses leaner and more effective, they will do it, because I think some of the values and the purpose that's going to be introduced as we move forward from the shareholder perspective and owners is the sustainability and the continuity of their business unit. And if they don't do the various assessments and risks and optimization, etc., and I think you said earlier as well about agile and resilient, then they're going to have problems.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Chris. I mean, the ground handling business is one that is fundamentally based on efficiency, and there's always a trade-off of, saving money versus keeping the quality of service. And, all the ground handling companies and all the aviation companies, whether it's airlines, airports, or any other service provider, everyone's looking to add cost efficiencies to save on money, because most of the revenue, most of the operations is based on the operations itself. And the margins are very, very small. And so when it comes to visibility, the question is, if you invest money in visibility, in tracking solutions, will it save more? And the truth is, not only it will save more, it will also allow you to do more with less manpower, with less assets. And I think manpower has been a challenge and will be even a bigger challenge now post COVID-19.
Yeah, definitely. And on that, you mentioned about the different elements or the different parties in the triangular partnership of airport carrier and ground handling agents. Are you seeing that there's a little bit more now common communication, more cooperation, and hopefully this is going to lead to a lot more collaboration?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually wearing this shirt because I just had a call with customers in Southeast Asia, and this call was actually with an airport authority and a ground handling company that works in this airport authority. And the airport authority also has a ground handling department. So to some extent, that they are not used to speak to one another, but let's say that they were looking to now share resources. Let's say they were looking to do a GSE pooling service. They want to use the same dollars because they want to optimize their expense. But there's a challenge, right? There's a challenge with moving to sharing equipment. I mean, it's the same wherever you go. If you need to share equipment, who's going to manage it? Who's going to maintain it? Who's going to use it when? How are you going to pay for it? Usually the pooling services are a pay-per-use, right? But if you don't know the location of the assets and you don't know who's using them, how are you going to bill on a pay-per-use basis? And this is something that we're trying to help with. So we have our regular offering. Let's add visibility to your fleet. Let's help you make better decisions and better allocate your time. But we're also looking at innovation and how the world of aviation is going to look 5-10 years from now, not just now in the coronavirus crisis.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right, and it's going to be very different. There is going to be a new normal, and things have already changed. And the one thing that everybody's got to get used to is things will be very different moving forward, and they're going to change faster than ever before. So all of the parties that can benefit from some of these efficiencies, they've got to collaborate a lot more and work together, and not like the old days where it's if I'm competing, I compete. I think groups like airport carrier, GHAs, etc., they've got to grow the cake in their own business region and then divide the slices up, not the other way around. So they need to really get together and be a lot stronger. Now, can I ask you, are you also doing any programs or anything with the traditional like pooling organizations for the containers, etc.?
Yeah, so what we're doing, I mean, for tracking ULDs and other types of containers, you have to have a tracking solution which has a much lower cost and can travel around the world. What we like to do at Hoopo is tell the truth to ourselves and know exactly what we do best. And so one of the things that we're doing now is we're converting our asset tracking solution for dollies also to be a hub that can communicate and associate with containers and ULDs. So I'm sure that there are plenty of ULD tracking solutions, and each ground handler may choose a different version of it. So we want to be a platform on which they can communicate and create real-time visibility everywhere. So we don't actively do it, but we enable the customers we have to use it from other vendors as well.
No, and that's crucial now, because there's been too many blockers, whether it be intentional or unintentional. And one of the things I was talking to Yuval about, and also to Champ as well, was the plug and play. Making sure that what you're doing is you're able to enable a part of the business to do well together, rather than have conflicts or complexity because of a different type of a system interface.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the entire world of it's called, the Internet of Things or connected devices. It's very, very fragmented. It doesn't really have one standard. And even for us, we try to adapt. We try to be able to work with many different standards. Even, the tracking technology we use, the communication protocols are off the shelf. We didn't want to create any struggle for an airport authority to require any regulatory certifications to use our solution. It's a plug and play. It uses something called the ISM band. So it's pretty much unlicensed bands all over the world. You don't need to apply for any special regulations. We even developed a gateway, or you can call it an access point, that goes on the motorized GSC and gets power from the motorized GSC. So if you're a ground handler looking to deploy a tracking solution, you don't even have to use the airport real estate. You can use your own vehicles as the infrastructure. And as you said, agility is the name of the game. We say data is king. We need to create data. There are many ways to use it. This is what we're trying to do. Actually, going back to one of the things you said about whether we see more interests, right, from the triangulation of partnership, as you called it. Let's, what happens in a month or 2 months. Not sure what the situation is. I know the UK is on a pretty harsh lockdown, but you're planning on opening up in a couple of weeks. But here in Israel, they actually lifted almost all the restrictions a couple of days ago. We have about 20 new carriers every day. That's about it. So it's pretty much under control for now. And they're already talking about, airlines coming back to work. But what happens when airlines come back to work? And this is, again, when it goes back to the mutual interests, everyone wants to fly the peak hours, right? The airlines want to choose the good hours. But it's also true for the ground handlers and the airports. The airport doesn't want to operate the airport for 24 hours. They want to do 1 shift, 2 shifts, same for the ground handlers. And so the fact that there will be less flights and less passengers doesn't mean that there's not going to be, capacity problems in certain times of the day. And again, optimization, data, this is what will eventually enable everything.
Yeah, and I think what you said about, or what you said people say is that, data is king. I always say data is power, and power, no matter where you are, is the way you use it. And,
Correct.
Sometimes people, they go on an overkill with data and nobody really knows what to do with it. But, things that are going to make a difference. And like you said, agility, resilience, optimization, efficiencies, being able to prove, and it's something that we've been talking on this show as well. What makes sense? WMS. If something makes sense, it leaps out at you, and it's almost like, why on earth didn't we do that before?
Right.
And when you get that sort of a feeling about something, then it's definitely going to be successful.
Right.
And I've done audits all over the world, and the one thing that always I just cannot understand it: the amount of equipment that you find in the far corners or in somebody else's yard, or just being overlooked and not being controlled. And then you look at some of the stock that is being kept, not because it's necessary, but because they don't know where the original stock is. So everything now, post-COVID, has got to be a lot more efficient, a lot more realistic, and a lot less waste.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
So where do I buy shares in Hoopo?
Well, for the moment, our biggest stakeholders are based, are large private equity companies based in Tokyo, Singapore, and Düsseldorf, Germany. And okay. For now, we're not sharing any more shares. I'm willing to share some of mine if you want, but we will have to take it offline because I'm not sure it's legal.
I'm only I'm only joking. Just to underline the importance, I think, and the relevance, but also now the origin of the name has got a nice little story to it.
Yeah, I think having shares in our name is even a better situation than having shares in the company. So we actually, when we founded the company 4 years ago, we didn't have an idea even how to call our company. So to be honest, I went on Facebook it's an entrepreneurial group, and asked for someone to give us a name. And then a genius guy who eventually won a cup of coffee, because that's what we offered at the time. We didn't have anything else to offer besides coming for coffee at the office. He said, well, you should call your company Hoopo, for several reasons. Hoopo is a bird. It's a great navigator. It's a bird that goes throughout the seasons between Europe, Asia, and Africa. And we're all about location. So navigation is great. Second thing, Hoopo is the national bird of Israel. And then the third and last thing is that Hoopo in Hebrew means it's here. So, it made sense. all the dots connected. And this is why we called our company Hoopo, and we've been Hoopo ever since.
That's fantastic. I love a story, especially when it makes sense. No, that's absolutely superb. Now, how long have you been going?
We've been in business for about 4 years. We've been in the aviation business for 1.5 years. It took us a while. What we like doing is, investigate why the customers might need our solution. So when we meet a customer from a new market, and many markets come in and speak with us because, as I said in the beginning, everyone wants to have low power and cost-effective tracking solutions.
Yeah.
But when we started looking in the aviation space, the questions that we were looking to ask is why, right? Why use tracking solution? How will you use it? And what will you benefit from it? And I think that the responses and the answers we've gotten from the aviation industry, after a month and speaking to several ground handlers and airport authorities, we looked at each other and we said, okay, let's put a lot of resources on the aviation industry because it just made sense. And I can tell you, I cannot share names, but I can tell you that the response and the traction that we've been receiving in the past year was incredible. Ground handlers, airport authorities, nowadays even airlines from the US, UK, Switzerland, Germany, north of Europe, Japan, Singapore. These are all places where we're already working in.
No, that's brilliant, and I think it's so important there. You use 2 words, and lots of people are told what to do, where to do it, when to do it, but they're not told why, and people don't ask the question. And I love an acronym. So for me, why is what helps you, and if people don't ask why or aren't being told, then it doesn't actually help them. It's just something that they go through methodically, and you have to keep telling them. But if they understand why, then they'll always do it. So I think that's important. I love the saying that you said earlier as well. When you're evaluating or when you're looking at yourselves, tell the truth to ourselves. So you don't try and force things that you're good at onto someone who may or may not get the full benefit of it, which I think is important.
It's the same as asking. You can ask yourself why, right? It's probably the same thing. Looking at yourself, thinking what you do best is. Just ask yourself, why are you doing what you're doing? Because I'll be honest with you, when we started the company, we thought we're going to develop a location technology. We're going to license it to larger companies, perhaps Cisco, perhaps Nokia, perhaps someone else, and they will go and make business out of it. But after 1 year of doing that and not really succeeding, we had to ask ourselves why, and it was very easy to answer, but and the answer was, you have to solve a problem to someone. We needed to go to the end users, to the ones who will benefit. And this meant that we had to develop hardware, which is something we didn't want to do in the beginning because, the burn rate for a hardware enabled software company is higher than just being a software company. But the truth was that if we were not to do that, we were to close the company. And long story short, I think it became a great success. We still have a very long way to go as a company, but what we're doing, we're taking the right path. And it's just because what you said, what helps you, whether you ask someone that or whether you ask yourself that, it's the same thing.
Yeah, and the how as well. How opportunities work.
Yeah,
and when you see an opportunity, it's the way in which people approach it, embrace it, engage it. And sometimes, and I think you've probably found, within our industry, it's like a great big tanker in the harbor. It doesn't move that fast.
Correct. But the one quote I really like is, the harder I practice, the luckier I get.
Yep.
You want to get opportunities, start getting things done. When we started the company and, we had to raise some money in the beginning from, venture capital firms, we've gotten 10 times more no's than we've gotten yes. But that's the game. Yeah,
but you got to be determined and keep going. What lessons do you think people should learn now, obviously from this global pandemic? And I don't mean to be condescending to anybody, because countries, governments, multinationals, local companies on street corners, etc. Everybody must be thinking to themselves, could I have done something different to have helped my company be more sustainable? And now the amounts of backup funding or reserve funding has shown very clearly that most organizations are very, very close to the wire.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, I'm as you said, I'm a young and motivated entrepreneur. I reduced the average age in the company, so we do have expertise in the company. But I think, you know, when the crisis started, it was obvious to everyone in the company that we had to cut on expense just until we understand what we're doing. And this is something I feel comfortable sharing and I feel comfortable advising. But, you know, besides that, if you look at a company, it really, really depends on what they have and what they want to do, what they want to achieve, and how long can they withstand such a thing. So for us, luckily enough, you know, we have the resources, we have the backing of our stakeholders, and what we're doing is actually we just launched a couple of weeks ago a demo kit, or you can call it a trial kit of our solution, free of charge for any ground handler or any airline or any airport that wishes to use our solution. And in a couple of weeks, we can ship it and start, you know, getting it to work, so that we can help companies start evaluating whether this makes sense for them, whether this will help them save money. So again, you know, trying to optimize, trying not to shut down everything. But of course, if you're on the verge of closing, then perhaps you need to reconsider what you're doing or change your focus area. We are doing whatever we can to use this time to add more features to our airport logistics solution. But we are working also in supply chain, which is an industry that is actually booming because of the coronavirus. So we're in a good spot, but I'm sure that there are many, many companies, and there's a huge percentage of the population, right, that is suffering very, very harshly. And for now, it seems like it doesn't affect many companies. We at the aviation industry, we feel it, but there are many other, you know, internet companies, or take Amazon, for example. They've been growing throughout the coronavirus, but eventually there's 26% of the Americans don't have work now. They're not employed, they're unemployed. So what does it mean in half a year? My guess is that some of them, if not most of them, will stop buying unnecessary things on Amazon. So even for the big ones, there's an interest for recovery here.
Yeah, and also, I think also as well, we were talking about 3DM, but also about the types of products that are going to run a risk of not being in demand once things tighten up. Because like you said, you know, people will be tightening the belt. Coming from an older generation, I always say to my son and daughter, look, fashion comes in and out, style stays. So why throw something that's got style away? And they come back at me and tell me I'm a hoarder. But if something's good quality and you like it, why do you have to keep replacing it all the time? And, you know, I just think people are going to, some of the values now will start to, there'll be a bit of a paradigm shift, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, I think one of the things that people now understand, we've been at a very good spot before the COVID-19. I think what people now understand is that there's 20% of the business that makes 80% of the effect. And you should focus on that for now. And afterwards, you can move into other things that are, as you can say, nice to have things. If you have a business that offers something which is nice to have, my guess is that your customers throughout this crisis are not buying anymore. And if that's the case, perhaps it was good, because it just, you know, it showed you that you're a nice to have in a certain industry. So either you pivot what you offer or you pivot your market. And so I do feel and think that this crisis has a tremendous and, let's say, even horrible effect on many, many people. But there's nothing we can do. And you asked about whether governments could have done things else. Yeah, I guess so. I guess, you know, some countries, probably including the UK, could have shut down or did a lockdown even before, but it doesn't matter now, right? So the question is, what do we do from here? And I think that's what people need to focus on.
100%. yeah, it's no good. It's no good failing if you don't learn. So this is the learning phase now, and don't be afraid to fail, but learn quicker, and that's what they have to do. One of the other things as well, which I'm sure you agree with, is the amount of people that have actually shown their value as humans and as just being people, but also in the services is incredible. And please God, I hope that they're not forgotten. That one of the things that comes out of this is that we have long memories.
Right.
That's really, really important. Now,
yeah, I'm not sure how is it in the UK, but I know like in Israel, the healthcare industry, or the NHS in the UK, they've been working. I'm not going to say this word on a podcast, but they've been working very, very hard. And perhaps now they're going to get the resources that they should have gotten before. So we should, as you said, we should show gratitude. We should say thanks, but we should also think, how do we learn from things that happen?
Yeah, and also not just recognizing and saying thank you. And on a Thursday here, everybody goes out and gives a clap, which is lovely. But once it all dies down, what the people there who go through training, they go through hardship, and they're not the best paid business. So things like that need to be addressed now moving forward, because it doesn't matter how successful you are, what car you drive, what house you live in. Okay, obviously certain things are more advantageous at the moment. If you've got garden space, it's great. Whereas before, if you lived right in the city and you were in an apartment, you had convenience and lifestyle and everything. All those things change when something like this hits. And nobody is any different when you're in a lockdown and when you're worried about your health. And that's the big leveler. So those sort of things, plus the climate. I think QHSS&E, every single one of those letters is going to have a different meaning in every single company now as we move forward. So again, when it comes down to data, it makes sense if it's the correct data to help with decisions. So all of those things are going to be so important.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you.
Do you risk assess now the opportunities and the impacts of your business?
Yeah, of course. I mean, of course, we've done this probably a couple months ago already. I think we understand, and we know for a fact that budgets and investments of companies in the aviation space are going to be only limited to the extremely crucial or critical business. Yeah. And so it's clear to us even that in most cases our customers will not be able to invest what they plan to invest in the next year or so. And so we've done the risk assessment in our company, and we've been thinking about it for a long while. But what we realized is that since we have the capacity to support and the resources to support our partners, so even in terms of business models, we've adapted to something we called DAS. And DAS stands for Device as a Service. So instead of you as a ground operations company investing several $100,000 in US dollars in a location system, you can now just rent the devices on a monthly basis and put everything on the OPEX. So only if it makes sense, if it's really cost effective on the margins that you make, only then you can start growing with us. And this is something that we've done, but of course, it's very hard to anticipate what's going to happen next month or in half a year. So this is something that has to be ongoing, very agile. And the good thing about being a small company is that it's much easier, much faster, to make decisions and change the routes or the paths that you're taking.
Okay, so one of the questions I was going to ask you was about what sort of flexibility as far as the remuneration or the payment process and contracts, and whether or not you'd have a convertible platform that you could give people ease if they needed something, and then offset the payments. So you are actually looking at things like that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we also have customers in that deal with recycling of construction debris. It's not in the aviation space, but this is something that we also see the environmental impact that they have. and they found it very hard to pay in the past few months. And so we were able to help them by delaying some of the payments, and by keeping the system alive, even though they didn't pass us the payments in time. And so this is something that we're trying to do. Of course, in a large scale, it will be harder, but we're open to help. Eventually, we're not trying to sell something as a one-time thing.
Yeah.
So all the relationships that we have, we look at them as very long-term and mutually beneficial. And so we will do everything in our powers to help.
Okay, brilliant. Now, if you were to give advice to anybody who was starting up or going into a new product line or whatever post-COVID, so with one eye looking on the past, very focused on today, but with an interest on influence in the future, what three things would you tell them they must and should or shall be firmly aware of?
Yeah, well, the first advice out of the three is don't listen to my advice, because no one knows your business better than you. And the second thing I think is, just like we discussed before you run and start developing something in your office or in your garage or wherever, ask why, and ask your customers what did they need, and as you said, what will help you, and start evaluating how much they need it. One of the things that our VP of Business Development, he always taught me, when you meet someone, never listen to what they say, listen to how they say it.
Yeah.
Do they have the shine, the shine in their eyes? And if they have the shine in their eyes, then move to the third thing. And that is start evaluating how can you prove the hypotheses that you have on what you're looking to develop, right? It's called, in my line of work, it's called the MVP. Not like the NBA MVP, but it stands for most viable product. What's the minimal viable product that you can develop? Minimal investment, but make sure that it validates the things that you speculate or assume about the target market, the target customers, how they're going to use it. I think this is a good start, right? And after that, you will generate data that you will need to analyze. I'm sorry for being so, logical and in some way also geeky, but that's the way it works. You need to. We can speculate and imagine and invent the world in our heads as much as we want, but eventually, when you meet reality, you have to reevaluate what you thought in the beginning. Yeah,
no, I 100% agree.
Well, I mean, why is this podcast successful, right? It started before COVID-19, right?
It did.
And now you have, I think at least, we've listened to several podcasts. We've heard about other people that are listening to the podcast. By the way, very interesting. Everything I listen to, at least. But this is one of the things you guys adapted, right? You answered the requirement for knowledge, and there aren't any physical conferences, at least for now, probably not for the rest of the year. And this really gives people benefit, and I guess this is why you're successful and even becoming more and more successful and heard by the audience.
Well, that was unexpected. It was unscripted, but it was very, very welcome.
Well, you can pay me afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. But just a little bit of background. Salem and myself and Salem's sister Parveen, we were just looking at a way to help people, especially the next generation coming into the business, learn from people that were already in, and also look at the people that were in and see whether they wanted to align with those types of thinking of people. So we started off by just wanting to know the person behind the position. And then obviously it was a little bit more lighthearted, and it was trying to, be as informative and to pass on or be a coach, passing the baton on. But obviously with this crisis, we still want to maintain that same sort of principle, but it has to be on a bit more of a lot more of a serious note, and with respect in mind for what's going on. But I think the time now for everybody, and it's not lessening the cost to some people's lives, but as a result of that, if the rest of us don't learn and do things differently, then it really is a sad situation. Yeah. You know, now everybody needs to be positive, move on, and move on as careful as possible. And one of the words that I use an awful lot is care. Consider all responsibilities everywhere. And people need to care an awful lot more and not just use the word as filling in a sentence. They must mean it. You come across as somebody who genuinely cares.
I try.
It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you. And I love a couple of the things that you said. And I will be 100% honest with myself, and I will be using them and saying that they were mine, or I'll be taking the benefit for some of those sayings. But really, really appreciate it. I hope we keep in touch. I wish you and your team great success. And thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, it was my pleasure, absolutely. And thank you for having us here. And, you know, let's hope that everything improves and the coronavirus clears out and that we're back in business. And once we're back in business and I'll be visiting the UK, I'm buying you a beer, Chris.
100%, my friend. I look forward to that.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Ty. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.